Okay, and we are live. Well, welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for movieswithmark.com, TwinCitiesGeek.com, and FilmInquiry.com. And we are currently in the middle of July right now, so I've got a few big summer movies to catch up on today. So what do we got on the docket today? We're going to be reviewing Despicable Me 4, the fourth film in the Despicable Me series, I guess technically with the sixth, I think, if you count the Minions movies at this point. So we'll talk about that new animated film. We'll also be talking about MaXXXine, the third film in the X saga by Ty West. I'll also be talking about Twisters, the legacy sequel to the 1990s disaster film about, what else, tornadoes. And then, of course, one more on the docket here. I'll also be reviewing Beverly Hills Cop, the fourth film. Depending on who you ask, it's either Axel Foley or Axel F. I've seen it go both ways, but I think most people have settled on Axel F. So that is what I'm going to settle on. So, we're going to be covering a lot of the big films that I didn't cover from the 4th of July. Of course, there was a lot. I haven't even covered like all the big ones that came out from July 4th, but I'm just trying to get to the big ones as quickly as I can here. And even though like Twisters, I believe Twisters actually came out yesterday, actually. So yeah, but usually I try to get in early reviews when I can. So if you want to see more early reviews of the upcoming movies, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Because in addition to all this, like when we get up to award season, there's going to be a lot of films that are going to be incoming here, and a lot of films that probably aren't going to be released until January that I'm going to get some early screeners of. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest movies, be sure to check. You know what to do. You've heard the spiel. All right, so. In addition to that, I also want to inform everyone that I am still working on the Patreon. The Patreon is not just for like doing these streams and keeping up with my movie reviews, but also for making books about movie history. And in particular, at the moment, I'm working on a book on Saturday morning cartoons, which I am updating regularly on the Patreon. If you want an update, I'm at the mid 1990s right now, so I'm nearing the finish line of that book. So once it's finished, everyone who is on Patreon will get a free copy of the book. And I'm telling you right now, it's probably going to be at least 500 pages, so it's probably going to be a bulky price. So you can save a little bit of money on the book by going there. All right. So without further ado, let's get right into it. We'll get to let's start off with the big film coming out this weekend. We'll get right to the top one. All right. Let me get my notes up here and get some water here. And we will review... clear my throat a little bit. And we will review the long-awaited... I don't know how many people were eager for a Twister sequel. Especially since there's no returning characters or storylines. I mean, I guess, like, it's weird. There's returning elements, but not returning characters. So if you're, I don't know, if you're hoping for the legacy of the characters to continue on, sadly you probably won't get that here. But I mean, it's like it's a film that's like almost 30 years old at this point. So, is it 30? Yeah, I think it's like just about 30 at this point, because the original was like 96, I believe. So, all right, let's get the notes up here. Oh, and also, thank you, Scorn, for stopping by here. I'll also be trying to like read chat after I get through the review here. So, all right. So here we go with the review of Twister. I just realized I have my hair up the whole time, and I tend to want to have my hair down for when I do this. So please bear with me for a moment as I let the hair descend here. While I'm doing this, I guess I'll give a little preview of films we got coming up here. Obviously, the big one coming up next week is Deadpool versus Wolverine. I will be getting a screening of that, and I will be reviewing it. I don't know when specifically I'll be reviewing it, because there is I think the embargo is for like Tuesday evening. I think it's like Tuesday late afternoon. So I will see if we can get a stream of that as soon as possible. Even though that might be the only one I'm covering. I might have to find a few other like streaming titles to cover in that amount of time, which shouldn't be hard. There's usually something. All right. Without further ado, let us get to Twisters in 3, 2, 1. So Twisters is the sequel to the original film Twister, which, you know, like the original film Twister, like the biggest draw about that film was just, you know, watching the special effects of giant tornadoes just, you know, just obliterate landscapes, and watching characters try to flee from it, and then they get sucked into it, and then, you know, it whips around cars. So it was a big budget, you know, disaster film. You get to see the cool special effects, and that was mostly what you came for, mostly because, like, from what I remember from the original Twister, I wasn't that engaged with the characters. Like, it was sufficient for a disaster film. It was like it was very much dumb fun at the time. Like, they were trying to make the most of it. But the interesting thing I think about Twisters is that, yeah, like, you know, on its surface, for those, you know, who are nostalgic for the original film, because I'm sure, like, you know, a lot of people have a lot more nostalgia for the original film at this point. You will get a lot of the cool, like, giant special effects of tornadoes just ripping through the Midwest and tearing up stuff, and people getting sucked into the cyclones, and there's fire that goes on in them, and there's electrical storms, and there's all, like, the fun disaster stuff. That much, I'm sure pretty much everyone expects that from, you know, this sequel to Twister. But what's actually surprising is that there's actually, and I don't want to make it sound like too much of a shocker, because, like, I want this to be more common, but, like, the character drama is actually really interesting. It doesn't just feel like, you know, and you know, this has been, like, a common thing with a lot of disaster films. Like, I was just recently watching, like, the latest Godzilla King Kong film, and it just felt like a lot of the human character drama stuff, they were trying, but it mostly felt like filler for what they were going to put in there. Here, it doesn't feel like filler. It feels like director Lee Isaac Chung has made, like, the character drama, like, the main course here, and then all the cool tornado stuff, like, you know, just the incredible special effects, that's like the icing on the cake here. It's not like the main event. It's not like you're, you know, just watching these characters just you know, mill about and, you know, try to stay out of the way of the tornadoes, let the special effects take over. Here it does feel like a really cool marriage between those two, and it mostly just comes down to, like, the performances. The performances are just fantastic here. So you have Daisy Edgar Jones playing Kate Cooper, who's a meteorologist who has been trying to study a way to make tornadoes more or less kind of like dissipate, or she basically wants to, like, tame and kind of, like, stop tornadoes in their path with, like, a certain experiment that she's trying out. But her first time that she tries it out, you know, when she's a little bit younger, she's a little bit more plucky, she has some faith that, you know, her and her crew are going to be able to make this work. She ends up losing pretty much everybody, you know, to this, like, tornado. Like, she thought she understood them, she thought she knew everything, but then she loses everybody, and, you know, she suffers a little bit of, like, trauma from that. But then back into her life comes Javi, played by Anthony Ramos, who's the only survivor of their tornado experiment, who basically comes back to her and says, look, you know, I'm working with the government, and, you know, I got a really great team of scientists here, and we're working on this new way to get better projections of tornadoes, and we need your help. We want you to come along with us, you know, kind of, you know, more or less face your trauma and help us out. So Kate agrees to do this, so she takes off to the Midwest with this big team, but she also has competition there, because there's this storm chasing group led by Tyler Owens, played with incredible charisma by Glenn Powell, who just throws on, like, a cowboy hat. You know, he's basically chasing storms for just the thrill of it, for being a viral sensation. He tracks them down, he drives into them with his car, and he just launches fireworks into them. And he just, like, he takes so much glee in it that it's like, it's like the film does want us to kind of, like, you know, be aggravated by him, and, you know, for Kate to see him as the nemesis. But he has, like, such, like, a great charisma to him, and also, as the film goes on, a lot of smarts to him as well. Like, he's not just, like, some guy who just grabbed, you know, like, a camera and grabbed his pickup truck, threw on a cowboy hat, and said, hey, I'm going to be a storm chaser. Like, he actually knows his stuff, so that when, you know, Tyler and Kate actually clash with each other, they have some really good romantic tension immediately. And it doesn't just feel like, dumb situations that, where they kind of like stumble into having this romantic dynamic that flows throughout the film. It's not like busy work for them to do. It's like there is something that's genuinely compelling between them. And it's mostly just because, like Daisy and Glenn's performances are just great. And I think there's two things that contribute to make that work. Like the first thing is that these are not dumb characters. Like they make mistakes and they do kind of like trip over themselves here and there. But when it comes to like studying weather, they do treat it very seriously, and they understand the mechanics of it. They're very focused on the science. And it's just great to just watch them when they actually start seeing eye to eye, when they start working together. It's genuinely great. And then just the charisma of both of them. Like Daisy has a great depiction of her trauma, and she makes it kind of real, but also, she kind of has like this, this way of almost kind of like sensing tornadoes. It's nothing like as fantastical as in like the Godzilla King Kong film, but it is one of those like very very inspiring things where you kind of like you're rooting for her. You want to see her get back into the saddle and start taming tornadoes. And then just Glenn Powell's just being Glenn Powell. It's more or less he kind of has the same energy that he brought in with another film from this year called Hitman, in which he does kind of like melt into this performance where he is kind of seen as kind of like a maverick of sorts, but also has some cunning and intelligence to him as well. So they play off each other really well, and I think having Anthony Ramos has a really good performance as a little bit of like a conflicted third party who isn't sure if he can place as much trust in Kate or Tyler, but eventually like he sees eye to eye with them as well when they start tracking bigger and bigger tornadoes, where they lead into the climax in which I don't know how much of a spoiler of this is, but Kate's invention kind of works in the same way that like the original Twister worked with like that dynamic. So, and it's interesting, like, I'm not even sure if I would call this, like, a sequel. I know a lot of people want to say, like, it's a legacy sequel of sorts, and there is, like, a few relations to the first film. Like, they do bring up the fact that Javi's trackers are basically, like, the same version of, like, the Dorothy's from, like, the original film. But other than that, outside of just, like, I mean, like, the tornadoes are pretty much the big returning star here. And to the film's credit, they do look pretty cool. There are ones that split apart into, like, kind of like sisters there. There's one that hits a power plant, and there's, like, fire swirling around it. There's a rodeo that gets decimated. There's towns that gets decimated. There's a really cool scene where a town is attacked and everyone takes refuge within the movie theater, and it starts like the movie theater just gets blown away. Like the screen starts rippling, and it just like it tears out, and people get like sucked out into the cyclone, like through the screen, which is a pretty cool sight. There's a lot of great special effects there. But I think what makes those like cool disasters all the more interesting is the fact that I think like Kate and Tyler never lose sight of the destruction that's being caused. Like, because there are several points in the film where they will kind of like shirk their research and their fame for the benefit of just saving everyone that's in the path of these tornadoes. And there are several people who will tell them, like, you can't do this, like that town's gonna get decimated, and they're like, no, we got to go help them because it's more about unity. Like, we've got to make sure that we're tracking these storms for the right reasons and keep this all in perspective, which is great because like there's a lot of disaster films that'll just like they'll kind of just like bask in the carnage and just like find the fun of it, but this is a film that actually actually sticks around for like the aftermath and doesn't shy away from it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of how what's his name, Katsuhiro Otomo would do a lot of these anime films, kind of like Spriggan and Metropolis, where there would be all these big disasters, but he would always focus on the details. He would always make sure there were people visible so that there was like loss of life, and there was like, you know, real stakes with like the carnage here. Like, you know, it wasn't like, you know, like a giant monster movie where most people got safely outside of the city or evacuated or stuff like that. Like, there's actual like consequences for like the tornadoes that rip apart towns here. So there's actually like, you know, stakes and danger, and that just makes like, you know, having this added romantic dynamic between Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell all the more entertaining. Like, there's rarely a dull moment in here, because when you're not watching tornadoes just completely obliterate everything, you're just watching Daisy and Glenn play off each other with just like this great cunning nature, especially in the first act, where like Kate is trying to deceive Tyler, saying like, you know, oh, well, you know, we think we're going to go west, because I think that's where the tornadoes will be, only for them to go east. And of course, like, Tyler, because he's, you know, he's studied like weather and he knows enough about this, and he's like, oh, okay, I see what she's doing here. So there's kind of a little bit of like a cat and mouse game between them, and I love how they kind of like have this rivalry, but when it comes to the actual disasters themselves, they kind of come together. And there's something really sweet about that. And at the same time, like, if I make this film sound like it's more like a romantic drama, it kind of is, but it does know where to have fun. It does know when to insert just the right punchlines. Like, there's a British reporter who follows around Tyler, and like there's some funny stuff with him as like kind of like the straight man in this material. There's a lot of like quirky characters who follow Tyler around, who are like cameramen and drone experts, who all have their own like eccentric type of characters. But much like Tyler, they also keep things in perspective as well. They know what matters most when it comes to like storms and tracking them and making sure that people get out of the way. So there's a lot of fun. Like, it's very much like a summer popcorn film where you don't have to turn your brain off. You don't just have to be like, yeah, okay, you know, the characters aren't really that compelling or interesting, and the script isn't all that good, but hey, you know, at least you got to see some cool tornadoes. And I mean, this is a film where you can have both, and I think that's just because Lee Isaac Chung realizes, you know, what matters most in a film like this, which is that, you know, if you're going to have a film in which people get sucked into tornadoes, you have to care about those people so that you don't want to see them get sucked out. Otherwise, it's just like it's a big spectacle of seeing how many bodies can get flung into these disasters. And while there is still some fun in that, I think it creates a much different dynamic where you care a little bit more about these characters, while still having that all the typical disaster movie fun that you would want out of that. So yeah, it's a big budget disaster film. You'll get all that, but you'll also get some great character drama from Daisy Edgar Jones, Glenn Powell, and Anthony Ramos. Also, a little bit of a shout. She's not in the film that much, but also Maura Tierney is also a pretty good moral pillar here as who is she? Yeah, she was Kate's mother. So yeah, a lot of great performances here. There's human performances that are just as compelling as the performances of the tornadoes, which do rip up a lot of stuff and do have a lot of cool, disastrous shots. So it's what can I say? It's a disaster film that can have its cake and eat it too. So Twisters should be playing in theaters everywhere this weekend. I believe it opened on Wednesday, so it should be playing right now. Let me read the chat here. Let's see. Did you hear about the protester at a screening of the Twisters? Screaming about cows. I did not. I think I remember hearing something about that. Because I do remember somebody said something about that. I don't remember the full context of it. I know, like, there's I do remember seeing that there was a weird thing. They did a reissue of the original Twister, where they have like the silly like steel book where, like, you know, it's just like it's a blank cover and then there's like an icon or a character or an element from the film, and then there's a little quote there. And I think the one for Twister was just a cow, because there's a scene where like a CGI cow is flying through the air in the original film. I didn't see I heard someone mention it, but because like yeah, like a little bit of a spoiler here, but there are no cows in Twisters. The second Twister film, there are no flying cows. So if you were, if you were terrified to see another cow flying across the screen, or you don't want to see a cow, relax. It's not in the film. I swear, I remember hearing something about this. What does it say here? The joke people say was, does she not know what CGI is? But I think there were protesting the rodeo scene. Oh yeah. Yeah, because like, there is a rodeo scene. But there is, to the best of my knowledge, from what I recall from the rodeo scene, I don't recall any of like the livestock getting sucked up into the tornado. Because like they do try to evacuate it like really quick here, and it's just everyone fleeing for their lives. There is a scene, I think, where one of the bulls tramples somebody in the chaos. But I don't think I don't think anyone was like heard that. I'm pretty sure it was like a stuntman who knew what he was doing there, and I think like the bull was fine with it. So it looked all right. It's nothing like gory or anything like that, if anyone's worried about that. Because yeah, like there is a tornado that assaults a rodeo, but you pretty much see all the livestock flee, like all the pigs and the bulls and the horses pretty much all flee. In fact, you see them flee first, and like I said, like they trample people to get out of their way. So I'm pretty sure like they all made it out alive. So yeah, like you will see many more people get sucked into the tornado than animals. Like I'm trying to recall, like I'm trying to remember. Actually, wait, there might have been. I'm trying to recall. There might have been some animals in the beginning. I don't recall there being them. I don't recall there. I do know if they are gonna like get mad at like animals getting sucked in the tornadoes. There is one scene where Javi hits a chicken coop that goes flying into his car at one point. And he does say like, I think I killed some chickens. But you don't see like you see some feathers and you see some egg splatter, but you don't see any like chicken bodies on the road. In fact, I think almost it's like ensure that like you don't see any of the dead animals. After the Twister stops, you do see a chicken that's alive on the hood of the car to let you know, no, the animals are fine. So like if I don't know why animal rights activists would get mad. Like the animals look like they survive pretty much every encounter here. More than the humans, so that's a plus. Because yeah, you do see a lot more humans get sucked up into the tornadoes than anything else, which you expect that from this type of film. But yeah, very smart film though. Okay, that's one down. Let's get to the film that came out not last week. Now we're talking about the 4th of July stuff here. So we'll get to MaXXXine. The latest from Ty West. Okay. So here we go with MaXXXine in 3, 2, 1. So MaXXXine is the third film in Ty West's X trilogy of horror films, which it's kind of interesting how this franchise has come about, because like it just like arrived like really quickly, because like we got like the first 2 entries in 1 year, with X and Pearl, which were both shot like back to back, and then we had to wait a few years, and then we got MaXXXine. So pretty quick timing here for this little horror trilogy. Now, what's most interesting, I think, about these films is that each one feels very different from the last. It feels like a type of horror film set in different decades. So, like when we got the first film, X, it was set in the 1970s, and it followed a group of pornographers who were trying to film pornography at a farm. And then, of course, we learned that, the people who were running the farm were made aware of this, and they start fighting back in the most brutal ways. And then after that, we got Pearl, which was a prequel meant to take place in the early 1900s, and it did have very much that feel of a little bit of kind of melodrama of the old Hollywood era, while still having a lot of gruesome horror elements that kind of that were kind of like thrown in as almost kind of like modern dashes, because there's a lot of familiar filmmaking aspects of that old type era, especially with the ending credits, which kind of hold on the character. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic, because the 70s film felt a lot like, kind of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like that, with kind of that leading into that exploitation. And then you got Pearl, which kind of leaned more into kind of the old Hollywood type of staging and tropes, and especially with Mia Goth's acting as the original Pearl before she became the older version in X, and then of course the spiritual successor to her with MaXXXine Minx. So now we get MaXXXine, which is meant to be more or less like the prequel to X, which continues with the character of MaXXXine, we haven't seen for a while. But for being set in the 1980s, here's the biggest problem, and here's the the strength and weakness of MaXXXine is that it's very much in the style of the other films, where it embodies the era. So it's set in the 1980s. So what types of 1980s films were there? There were lots of thrillers. There's street revenge. There was lots of gruesome violence. There was there was the Satanic Panic. There was the advent of home video. And the video nasties era. So those are all pretty much elements I expected to be in MaXXXine. And for a film that wants to embody the elements of that era, I think it's intriguing. I think the problem is that a lot of the film kind of rests on the laurels of that type of genre. Because X felt like it was adding a little bit of something to that exploitation era by exploring a little bit more of the culture shock of it, much in the same way that that Pearl was adding in those modern horror touches into that old Hollywood melodrama vibe. And here with MaXXXine, it just kind of feels just like an 80s thriller, which if that's because like I said, I kind of more or less expected that. But if you're expecting anything more, that it would add something to that, just take that 80s aesthetic and then throw a few extra touches into it that would kind of surprise here and there, you're kind of gonna be let down. Because if you have seen a lot of 80s thrillers, you're probably gonna walk out of this film and just be like, yeah, okay, yeah, that felt like watching one of those B-movie thrillers all about revenge and violence from the 1980s, but it doesn't really feel like a lot much else. So the story is that MaXXXine, once again played by Mia Goth, is trying to graduate from pornography into a horror, into being a horror movie star. And she gets her big break with this upcoming sequel to a direct-to-video film called The Puritan. It apparently became really successful, so they decided to make a sequel called The Puritan 2, in which MaXXXine, as just, she ends up landing a big role in it. So she's like, okay, this is my big break. I finally get to be an actor. I get to make my dreams come true. I get to do what Pearl could never do, and I get to ascend further past, where I last was in the film X. So yeah, there's stuff there's a lot to root for with MaXXXine. The problem is, I think that MaXXXine has become so hardened by this point there doesn't really like it. Like I said, it feels like an 80s thriller. So at this point, MaXXXine is very like stoic. So like when she goes off to like, you know, when she walks the streets at night, she carries a gun. And of course, if someone tries to track her down and mug her or try to like rape her or fight her, she just whips out the gun and just tortures them in the most brutal way, which I have to admit, those scenes are actually pretty cool. Like it is pretty cool. When someone tries to corner her, she whips out her gun, forces him onto the ground and makes him put the barrel of her gun in his mouth. And then she gets to stomp on his balls. That's in very bloody and graphic detail. The problem is, though, I wish there was more of that. I wish there was, like, you know, it leaned further into that instead of just going at, like, this steady pace of trying to make it more of, like, a revenge thriller than a horror film. Because you can see those aspects of horror seeping through here and there. Like, there's this... The whole premise is that there's a serial killer on the loose and that he's targeting people who, you know, MaXXXine is familiar with or that she is working with, and MaXXXine starts to get worried about, you know, well, who could be doing this? And of course, it plays into, you know, much like with X, it plays into the hysteria of the era with the satanic panics and the people protesting it, and, you know, people espousing moral decency. So, you know, you get all that within that film, within this film. The other problem I think with MaXXXine is that I think that, like I said, like it's leaning very much into that 80s aesthetic. And one of the things I think it leans the most into is playing up the camp of the era. So like you have like a few big names here within like the cast list here. So like you have Giancarlo Esposito playing Teddy Knight Esquire, who is MaXXXine's agent, who is doing his best to help her get roles here. And, you know, it was nice to see Esposito in a role where, like, you know, he's not just playing, like, you know, like the calculative villain here. Like, I like him playing this kind of, you know, this this agent who, you know, like has like ridiculous dress, and, you know, I love the way that he talks to MaXXXine. But it feels like he's having, you know, like they do try to play up these roles like they're having fun. And it was fun to see Esposito play up this role, but there were several moments where you're just kind of like, okay, like I get it. Like they're trying to make lemonade from lemons here, but a little of that goes a long way. And I think that's especially true with the addition of Kevin Bacon as John Labatt, this private investigator who is tracking down MaXXXine and basically stalking her at the request of some mysterious third party who, of course, is behind all these murders. And Bacon, he's playing up his role, like he's trying to be extra sleazy and smarmy with the way that he dresses in these like loud suits, and just invites MaXXXine to like to dinners, or just like yeah. This is my business, just tracking people down and just videotaping them without their consent. It's like, it's fun for a bit, but at some point you're just kind of like, okay, I get it. They're playing up these roles, but like, I don't know. I felt like there had to be a little bit of something more here, because it's mostly just watching these actors just kind of do the best with what they can. Because the material here, like the whole mystery behind who is targeting MaXXXine is not much of a surprise, especially when you consider the opening here. Like for whatever it might be worth, as a little bit of a spoiler here, it ends up being a religious cult with someone that MaXXXine knows personally. So yeah, it does play a lot into the satanic panic there. There are a few good roles I liked here. Like I really did like Elizabeth Debicki as kind of like this hard-nosed director who honestly, you kind of almost suspect that she's going to be a villain, just for how she kind of plays up her role as a strict British director who wants to assert herself in the sleaze of the 1980s scene. She becomes a very interesting character that I almost wish there was a lot more going on with her. Because like there's a pretty stacked cast here, and it does feel like a lot of them are just kind of just, you know, it feels like they're each given like their own roles where they get to eat the scenery, and they don't really like combine as much or kind of like cavort with these roles, which is kind of a letdown, because I almost would like to see what would happen like if they do clash a lot more. Like I would love to see a lot more exchanges between like Giancarlo Esposito and Kevin Bacon. I think they'd have like some really great lines if you force them together in a lot of scenes. But then also you get like Michelle Monaghan and Bobby Cannavale, like they're playing detectives who are trying to track down the serial killer as well, but they're one step behind MaXXXine, and they're mostly just played up as typical detectives. Like they're trying. They are so trying to eat up the scenery with the script they're given here, but it feels like they're trying to perform CPR on the ship. They're trying to inject it with some more energy, some more of that camp value. Try to embody more of that era, and it just doesn't come across on the screen. And like I said, like they breeze by them so quickly here. There's not enough time to appreciate all these characters and how they interact with MaXXXine, especially with MaXXXine being such like a stoic pillar that she's almost kind of like a vessel to go through this world, kind of like with Mad Max or Charles Bronson and the Death Wish movies. So like I said, era appropriate, but it felt like there had to be something outside that era to carry that film a little bit more, especially because like if you compare this film to like X and Pearl, just in terms like if all you're coming into this film for is just like the horror and the gore and the violence, this film probably has the least amount of it, and also like the least amount of messed up weird stuff, like how in like Pearl she was having sex with a scarecrow, and then in X there's a scene with like the gators and like the livestock being killed and the shotgun blasts. That there was always some memorable weird moment there. And MaXXXine, this film just kind of feels like it's going through the motions. It's just kind of like, okay, this is more or less what we would expect to see out of like an 80s horror thriller, and not much more than that. Like there are moments I remember from Pearl very vividly that I love. There are moments from X that I remember very vividly that I love. There's not a lot of moments in X, and in fact, there's not a lot of moments in MaXXXine. And in fact, if you compare a lot of the scenes in MaXXXine to like X and Pearl, they kind of pale in comparison. Like just compare like the way that like MaXXXine ends in comparison to Pearl. In Pearl, we held on Mia Goth's face where like, she has that uneasy smile she's trying to force after, she's murdered her whole family and wants to, still be a star and realizes that time has passed. And she just like holds that smile for the entire credits go by, which is, it was creepy and it was like intimidating. It's like, I'm never going to forget that shot. But within MaXXXine, the film ends by holding on a decapitated head that's a prop meant to represent MaXXXine, and it's just like it's lifeless and dead, and it's shocked, and it looks shocked, but it just holds on that, which we've shown to be a prop there as the credits go by, and it's just like it's just lifeless and limp, and it's not intimidating. And of course, I know like it's meant to be a prop, so you can't be as intimidating as you were with Pearl. But I really do think that kind of sums up MaXXXine. Like Pearl felt like it was alive and it held your attention, and MaXXXine just felt like it was kind of going through the motions, trying to get to like this ending by placing the X saga with a 1980s themed finale. And considering how many horror films we've gotten within like the past decade or so that have tried to embody the 1980s aesthetic, MaXXXine isn't even one of like the better ones either. So yeah, it's really very much like a letdown. I wouldn't say like it ruined the franchise for me, but it does feel like a very stock horror film and a very limp way to end this trilogy, especially when you compare it to X and Pearl. So yeah, MaXXXine is definitely the weakest of this trilogy. So MaXXXine, I think it's playing in a few theaters. You're gonna have to look for it, because I think it's A24, so it's probably gonna be leaving here in a bit. Read the chat here. I got interested in MaXXXine because I heard it was inspired by Italian giallo films, and I love those. Partially. It's got some aspects of it. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Suck's comments here. Yeah, fun scenes, but MaXXXine is definitely unsatisfactory. Yeah, especially when you consider what it's playing up against with the past films that it's within like this series, and then just 1980s retro horror films in general. Yeah, it's just like it's lacking. It's lacking in everything. It's lacking in the thematic focus. It's lacking in a particular style choice. It's lacking in kills. It needed more wild and weird kills. Because there's a few nice ones. Like I love the staging of the video store murder with Maxine's gay best friend. I like the staging of it. I wish it had gone a little bit further and just not relied on the reaction shots of just blood splattering all over like the VHS tapes, which is like it's okay, but in comparison to like to go from to that after we watch the scene of like Maxine make some dude suck on her gun and then blow off his balls, it pales in comparison. And in fact, I feel like the film almost kind of like peaks way too early, because that alley kill that makes Maxine performs pretty early in the film, that's the best kill in the film, which is saying something, because like there's a heavier body count by the end of the film, and it's not as compelling. Although I will say there are a few good crotch gougings, I guess is the best way to say it, in the finale, which I wish could have been framed a little bit better. So yeah, my favorite scene in X was when they sing Landslide. Just simple, like yeah, and like there's a lot of like just like simple moments within X that are just really cool to look at. Even just like the shots in general in X are just so, like that scene where like she's, like one of them is just like, it's just on the other side of the couch, just like getting ready to do the sex scene, and like the camera is like kind of like tilted down, pointing upward at the ceiling. I just love the way that shot just looks. And then all the scenes in the barn, and then like the silhouette of like the penis and all that. Just I love the way that X is framed, Same with Pearl, but like I said, different dynamics. So yeah, it's almost kind of like a mixed bag. It's like an anthology. Like there's clearly like connecting points here, but like it would suffice more of an anthology. Like, all that being said, I would actually be curious to see what Ty West would do with like a kind of like like an X style like horror anthology, like kind of like similar to like Fargo, where it darts between different points in time and places, but with like similar types of characters. I would love to see West do something like that, because like I want to try to like frame the review like that, because like yeah, I didn't like Maxine. But I'd love to see Ty West do like more in this type of style of exploring more of this material, Elizabeth Debicki should have been related to Pearl as the main villain. See, I go back and forth about whether or not I like that or not, because I don't know if it'd add anything. Like, I get that it would add a connecting line. I just don't know how much you could... I mean, maybe if West... worked on the script a little bit like that, I think it could actually be compelling if like there was some big shock to it, because I think that was like the biggest problem with Maxine. It needed that shock value. It needed that moment where you're just like, oh my god, they're actually doing this. Because there are moments like that in Pearl and X where you're just like, oh man, we're really going this direction, aren't we? And there was rarely a moment with that Maxine. Just like, okay, yeah, okay, I've seen this in other films. I see what we're doing here. Yes, I get the odes. Yes, I see the VHS tapes. I see the film they're referencing here. I get it. Yeah. Yeah, and like you were saying there with Italian giallo films. Yeah, there's a little bit of that in there, a little bit. But it's I would say it's almost kind of less like an ode, and more just kind of like a wink, if that makes any more sense. Like, because there's a few aesthetic choices in there that reminded me of giallo. A few here and there. But yeah, if anything, I think it's especially for the fact that parts of the film take place on like a Hollywood backlot. There's definitely some I guess like I was trying to think of like an 80s film that's more akin to, but I think like I was thinking like more like the recent retro horror films he's got. I think it's a little bit more akin to Censor. Which some people might remember. It was that film about somebody who's trying to like censor the gory stuff out of horror movies in the 1980s, and then she becomes targeted herself. Much better film than MaXXXine, though. Much better. So yeah, if I would say watch that too. Like, if you want to see like the stuff that MaXXXine could have been, watch Censor as a nice little chaser to that. In fact, I think I might watch Censor come Halloween time, just to remind myself what a more compelling 80s horror film looks like. The chase with Kevin Bacon was the best part. The chase was actually pretty good. It's pretty good. Like, it's not like, it's not very intense, but it is decently shot, and there is some decent tension that mounts when Mia Goth is chased by Kevin Bacon in the film. It's pretty good. It's pretty there's some good stakes there, and I like the way that it's filmed. Yeah, that was definitely one of the better parts of the film. And again, I wish there were more. It feels more like it's a patchwork of all these like really cool scenes and great ideas, and then they never quite mesh together as well as they could, Okay, so we're about halfway done here. I think my voice is holding out. So let's get to this thing. Alright, let's get to Despicable Me 4. I guess. I'm not trying to frame it as like, oh god, why am I reviewing this? Why am I doing this? I know I reviewed it. So I can offer my 2 cents. Alright. So let's see. Let me get my notes up here. And here we go in 3, 2, 1. So Despicable Me 4 is the 4th Despicable Me film, obviously. And, I was thinking back to the original Despicable Me and how, it was kind of a cute film. Like, I wasn't as in love with it as everyone else was. But, for what it was, I thought it was fairly cute with how it depicted, Steve Carell as Gru, this villain who kind of learns to reform after he adopts these 3 cute kids. And it gives him, a different perspective on life. I really kind of thought it's in retrospect, it's much cuter than I think I originally gave it credit for. And there are parts of it that I still kind of like. And I think it's kind of clever here and there. But now we're at Despicable Me 4, and at this point, I don't even know if Gru cares about these kids anymore. Just because the 3 kids, they're still present in this film, like they're not written out, but they might as well be, because there's nothing for them to do within this plot. It just feels kind of like they're shoved into the background and given something to do, because there is way too much else going on in Despicable Me 4 to even care about those kids anymore, let alone care about anything that's going on in this film. Because like this has been my biggest problem with like Illumination films for like the past 12 years or so. Like, pretty much all their films have just felt like a patchwork of gags that they stitch together, and then just hope that, it somehow makes a good film if you just like combine them all together, even with the stitching obviously visible. This has always been the problem with their films. This was like the problem with the past few Despicable Me films. This is the problem with the Minions films. This is the problem with The Secret Life of Pets. This was the problem with the Super Mario Brothers movie. It's their style, more or less. And when I came into Despicable Me 4, I was like, okay, you know what? I've been through enough of these Despicable Me films, so I know what to expect. I know that it's just going to be a series of gags. They're not really going to connect that well. The script isn't going to tie everything neatly together here. A lot of stuff is going to meander. We're going to get a lot of bits with the Minions. Okay, I'm prepped. I'll accept the film for what it is and just like, okay, if the gags are fine and they can make up for the script, sure. I'll go along with it. The problem is that there are way too many plot lines going on in this film. And with that happening, and the thing is, I feel like all these plot lines were introduced so that, like, the film could be fast. Could be like, oh, we're going to go to this plot, then we're going to go to this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And hopefully, the speed of which we zoom between all of them will get all these great gags that'll feel just like the gags are hitting you one after another, after another, after another. But it doesn't work just because all the gags here just they fall flat on their face. So instead of like getting like a series of funny gags where you kind of spend more time laughing than you are like trying to connect, like, oh, wait, weren't we concentrating on these characters and what happened to this plot line? You're concentrating on the slapstick and the funniness of like the minions getting into all sorts of antics, and Gru stumbling all over the place and tripping all over himself, and the kids acting cute and the minions acting cute and the villain acting dorky. Hopefully all of that will make up for the scattershot script. And it doesn't. It really, really doesn't. Like with the third Despicable Me film, it was an estranged brother type of plot. So and again, like, they lost track of the kids in that film. So just like, okay, it was just the brother plot. It's like, there's few cute things here and there, but not much else. Here, there's barely enough time to appreciate anything. So the whole plot is that Gru is being assaulted by his old nemesis from villain school called Maxime Lamal, played by Will Ferrell with a terrible French accent here. So Maxime's whole deal as villain is that he's transformed himself into a cockroach, and I guess he wants to make the rest of the world into cockroaches, but his top priority at the moment is just getting revenge on Gru for being, like, not even bullied, just kind of like one-upped in villain school. So he wants to seek revenge on Gru and his family. So Gru decides to go into a protection program for his family, especially since he has a new baby in the household, which, as if there weren't enough characters. Now we get like a little mini Gru, baby Gru, to be thrown into the mix, along with like all of Gru's kids, which they're just given busy work to do here. Like, if you're hoping to see more of like the cute kids interacting with Gru, you will not get that in this film at all. In fact, a lot of like the stuff with the kids just kind of meanders, and a lot of it takes place off screen. Like the two youngest ones, they end up taking karate class, and there's like some okay slapstick, but it's for one scene and one scene only. And then with the oldest, she's terrified about going to a new school and fears that she's going to get bullied by the other kids, and then that happens, and she feels down, and she doesn't want to be in this new town. It's typical stuff that kids go through. But all of that happens off screen. You never see what happens to this kid. And that's only because we spend so much time with everything else that's going on in the film. So most of the minions end up going off with Gru's anti-villain agency, where they become agents, and a few of them get superpowers. So there's this whole superhero plot, which is like, it's kind of funny for like a few slapstick gags, but it loses its luster after a while, which is kind of rich because like this film, like, it feels like it wants to have like some winks and some biting and knowing humor here and there, but it all falls flat just because like the film itself feels like it's contradicting itself. Because like at one point, like, they establish like the minions are terrible as superheroes, and then like one civilian says like, oh, I'm so sick of superheroes, meant to highlight how people right now within the movie landscape are sick of superhero movies, while this film is still playing up the superhero trope and not really doing anything interesting with it. Because like even like it's just busy work all around here. Like with Gru, it feels like at one point, like it's meant to be about like Gru trying to connect with his baby, which would be kind of a cute subplot. Although it's kind of weird that the ultimate resolve of the film is that the onus is on the baby to accept Gru, which is weird. But then before that plot line can take off, it's all about Gru trying to better assimilate and interact more with people and make better friends. So at one point, he tries to befriend his rich neighbor, who's this country club, a country club tennis player, played by Stephen Colbert. So you think, okay, maybe they'll have some decent moments to play off each other there. But then we get another subplot about the neighbor's daughter who knows Gru's secret and forces Gru to help him. To help her steal the villain school mascot so that she can get into villainy school. But then there's another subplot where the villain school comes after Gru for stealing the mascot. So you have the principal who's wheelchair bound, who has all these gadgets in her wheelchair, so she starts attacking Gru and his family. And while all this is going on, the minions are having superpowers, and while that's going on, the Will Ferrell cockroach villain is after them, and while that's going on, the kids are having problems in school, and while that's going on, Lucy, Gru's wife, played by Kristen Wiig, is also trying to be a hairdresser, and she ends up screwing that up, and it's too much going on. And like I said, it doesn't make the gags come one by one. If anything, it slows them down because you have to explain every one of these plots. Like, the first act of this film is a slog. It's a slog of exposition, of just characters explaining the situation of what's going to happen, what they're going to do, what they're setting up, with barely any jokes in there. Even like the minion slapstick in the background can't cover up how boring a lot of these scenes are. Which, you know, to speak a little bit more to, like, I don't want to try to speak for the audience, but, you know, when I saw this in a crowd with, like, a lot of, like, families and kids, a lot of them weren't really digging on this. A lot of the kids looked like they were getting bored and tired with how dreary, like, the first act was. Like, how a lot of the jokes just weren't landing. I also found it kind of rich how, like, dated a lot of, like, the references in this film are. Because, like, at one point, like, okay, so the villain school mascot is a honey badger. So, when describing the mascot, Gru makes a lot of those honey badger jokes. And yeah, remember, like, all those funny honey badger jokes and how they were really funny, like, 8 years ago? And it's weird because, like, there's a lot of, like, I think almost kind of, like, unexpectedly dated stuff here, because, like, the neighbor who wants to force Gru to help her steal the mascot, what's her name? Her name is Poppy, played by Joey King, who I will admit this, like, King does a pretty decent performance as this kind of like snotty teenager who wants to assert herself as a villain. But at one point, she tries to, like, reference how, like, Gru is really old and does, like, you know, like, the okay boomer joke, another dated joke there. But it's weird because, like, she's commenting on the fact that, like, Gru is really old and out of touch. And yet, in the next scene where we see her, she's in her treehouse playing Dance Dance Revolution to Dragon Forces Through the Fire and the Storm. A song that is older than she is. So it's weird. Like, you can very much tell that this was a film written by some very older people, especially for an ending in which they have they reference 2 1980s songs for, like, the characters to dance to. And like I said, like, all this feels like busy work for the characters, you know, to get to, like, gag to gag here, and most of the gags just kind of, like, fall flat, even if you're just looking at on a slapstick level. And especially when you compare it to the past Minions and Despicable Me films, they're so weak in this film. Like, they're just like, oh, okay, I can tell they're trying, but, like, they need to put some extra effort into making these scenes, you know, carry a little bit more weight and be more funny and unexpected, because they become so repetitive and predictable as the film goes along. And you can tell the film is getting desperate by the time they get to the ending, where they do the same thing they do with every one of these Despicable Me films, where they play a dated song, the characters sing along to it, and they all dance along to it, except in this ending, Will Ferrell and Steve Carell are both singing as their characters in a prison, and while they're singing, all the villains of the past Minions and Despicable Me films all come out to also sing and dance, so it's like it's reminding you of all the other films. And by the time it got to that, you know, and this was by the end of the film, I was just like, wow, y'all just ran out of ideas, didn't you? You're just, like, throwing everything else that you've done up here, that you've done on the screen here, and it's just like, and I almost feel like the cameos are thrown in to cover up the cracks within like this script that just isn't working. Because like I said, it's just an excuse for gags, but there's way too many plot lines, and it forgets about characters, and it meanders all over the place, and it's just not fun. And even if you're just coming to this film just because you think it's cute, even the cuteness doesn't work, especially because the film has to hold your hand at several points. There are several points where the film will just stop so that the characters can react and say, "Ah, isn't that cute?" Almost kind of like a canned laughter track, as though the audience won't know what's supposed to be cute in this film, which is a little bit demeaning. And you know, like, it's not cute. It's not funny. It's like, and sure, I'll admit I've never been that big of a fan of the Despicable Me films, but even if you are, I mean, even if you are, like, you can tell there's definitely a big step down in quality here for how it forgets about so many characters, how it can't find enough fun stuff to do with them, how it can't stick to a plot line, how it can't make a plot line pay off in this, and how the gags are just not hitting the same. And yeah, like, and this is already a super profitable franchise. It's already resting on its laurels here, and it just feels lazy here. Nothing works here. The performances are bland. The slapstick is just off. It just like all the stuff is there where it's like, okay, this should be funny, and it's not landing any laughs here. There were barely any laughs within the crowd I saw it with. It was just so limp, and you know, I really question, you know, what's going to happen with these Despicable Me movies and Minions movies at the rate they're going. I almost feel at this point they just should be a patchwork. Like, why even have a script? Why not just make it just like a series of just little like anthology bits of like just silly stuff that the Minions do, or just, you know, little things that Gru does. Like, I mean, clearly the thing that's holding these Illumination films back is just the fact that they're trying to cobble together an ongoing plot line here that just doesn't pay off. So, you know, if Illumination's like, I think Illumination is fine when they're doing like shorts and stuff like that. So why not just do a series of shorts as an anthology? I can only hope that they do that, because if not, if they don't, like, I feel like these Despicable Me movies are just gonna get way worse with just like forgetting about a lot of these characters and what made these films work in the first place. So yeah, it's Despicable Me 4, it sucks. I wish I had like a better way to describe, you know, this film that's just like, it's going down for the count while it's already resting on its laurels and it's just getting lazy with its animation. But like, that's the best way to say it. It's just like, it's not funny, it's not cute, it's just boring. So yeah, Despicable Me 4, it's making a ton of money. It's in theaters. You can watch it everywhere. It's not going to leave theaters for a while. See it at your own peril. Let's see here. Sorry, reading through the chat here. I've not seen one Despicable Me movie or Minions or Minion related thing. I just don't care for this series, and I get it. It's mainly for families. It's not even for families at this point. It's for baby boomers. Log onto Facebook and you'll see tons of baby boomers who just post nothing but like Minions and Despicable Me stuff. Like the same thing goes, like my old ass parents talk about Despicable Me movies a lot. It's for boomers. That's why with like the previous Minions film, one of the commercial tie-ins they had for the Minions was life insurance. I'm not kidding. That's their target demographic. It's old people. It's jingly keys of animated films for old people to take their grandkids to. Not to be too prescriptive, but that does very much seem to be the case. At least, let's see, another comment here. At least this may be the final Despicable Me movie. Maybe. I don't know. They're already working on another Minions movie, so who knows. Honestly, only Honey Badger jokes I know are Hufflepuff related. Yeah. Those are pretty old too. Oh yeah, I think I got the Dragon Force song wrong, but yeah, like yeah, and it's a good song. I like that song. It was nice to kind of hear that song, but it's like, I'm sorry, but This film came out this song came out when I was in college, and here's this teenager talking about, "Oh, you're so old." Like, let's see, life insurance, is that better or worse than the Lorax? I don't know. It could be like I haven't looked into the company itself, but life insurance tends to be a little predatory, so worse, I guess. Let's see, another comment. It's true, my dad used to be into Paw Patrol. Well, the thing is, I think that like Paw Patrol, I think is almost by osmosis of like grandkids, because like the very young kids are watching Paw Patrol, and if the grandparents are going to be watching the grandkids, a lot of the times they're going to end up watching the same stuff, so chances are they're going to be into Paw Patrol, which I have seen that too. I have seen a lot of parents and grandparents who are into Paw Patrol a lot. Despicable Me more, I think, just because like those films tend to come out on July 4th, so that's perfect family time. So that tends to get a lot more coverage than like Paw Patrol, with the Paw Patrol movies that come out in was it August, September? I think I'm pretty sure that what's that? Because there's been two wait, the last one was in September, last September. I remember that because a bunch of people were trying to force this social media trend of going to see Paw Patrol 2 on the same weekend as Saw X. So, and what were they? It was something like Saw Patrol or something like that. They were trying to make it take off like Barbenheimer, and it's just no. No, it wasn't gonna work. It didn't become as big as as Barbie and Oppenheimer. Some people will claim it did, like, because they did good box office, but like they've always done good box office. Like the Saw and the Paw Patrol movies they don't cost that much. Like they're like what, like 30 million tops, and they clear that budget easily every time. Because like for one, like having kid entertainment is like good counter programming for a lot of like the horror that would come out in fall. And horror movies in general just make money. Like that's why they're the most profitable genre. Even if you blow 30 million, which is on the high end for a horror movie, they make bank. So yeah, like Paw Patrol and Saw X, we're gonna make money regardless. They're a profitable franchise. It wasn't like some like rolling the dice of like Oppenheimer and Barbie, where it's like, oh, who knows, Christopher Nolan doing his first biographical drama, and Greta Gerwig working on her first toy movie. It's like, no, they're sequels. They're well established sequels that have made bank before. It's not a big thing. Let's see here. More comments here. The Barbenheimer, that's actually going to be a movie now. Yeah, and it'll suck because it'll be a clout chase. It'll be very much like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, where it's someone trying to chase clout and chase a trend all the way into its grave. Well, they tried. I mean, they were trying to make it a thing, and if that's a fun thing you want to do with your friends, it's fine. I don't mind it. I just don't think you should set your expectations as high as Barbenheimer. If you want to make a fun game out of it, get your friends together, and you dress up as both the jigsaw puppet, and yeah, you throw on your Paw Patrol attire. Sure, have fun with it. Just don't expect like it's gonna be like the next Barbenheimer trend, Let's see. Thanks to Full Moon Features, for the. Yeah. Full Moon will try anything to get in the spotlight. Although I will give Full Moon credit that they do take a gamble on some pretty wacky horror films. So they still got some of that quirky spirit that I loved back in the 90s. With well, I'm pretty sure that was them. Was it Full Moon that was working on the Puppet Master and Demonic Toys and all that? Because I love those movies. Oh god, I love. My brother and I would rent the whole Puppet Master series and demonic toys. We really liked that was the crossover Doll Man versus demonic toys. That was a lot of fun. Basically like Doll Man was like this like small detective who followed solved crimes, and he had to fight off against the toys, so that was pretty cool. Right, did well in relation to budget, yeah. Blood and Honey 2. I would think it has. It almost feel like I have not seen Blood and Honey 2, but I feel like that might actually end up being kind of like was it Return of the Killer Tomatoes was the sequel, I think, because that was like it was a sequel that was aware that the first film sucked, but tried to play off it. I think it was like Return of the Killer Tomatoes, because like the trailer played up the campiness of it. And I think like the tagline of the trailer was like, "It's better than the first film. It'd have to be." Where they played it up, you know. I was like, yeah, it was Puppet Master, and then of course, yeah, there's stuff like Evil Bong, Killjoy. Yeah, Doll Man. Doll Man was a lot of fun. You're reading long at some point. Eventually. I'm gonna try to see if I can get around to seeing it, because it's Neon, so like when Neon releases a film, like it only releases in theaters for a little while, and then it just like evaporates from the ecosphere. But at any rate, even if I don't, I will definitely cover Longlegs by fall, because when fall rolls around, Neon sends out a big box of all the films that they're gonna push for awards. And by all the films that they push for awards, I mean everything. I mean everything that Neon released that year. I'm not even kidding. When Neon sent me the box of all the stuff that they were trying to push that year, they sent me Infinity Pool, which was up for nothing. They sent me Robot Dreams, which which did get nominated for awards, but Robot Dreams didn't come out until like last month for a general release. So yeah, that was more for awards. But they also gave me the reissue of Old Boy, which I found kind of odd. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, there's nothing to nominate it for, but I guess I could re-review Old Boy if since you got the rights. So that was pretty cool. So at any rate, sometime this year, I will get Longlegs, even if I don't get around to seeing it in theaters. So yeah, I loved Robot Dreams. I'm so grateful now that it's now getting a theatrical release, and now people are starting to see it. And you can actually, I have a review over on movieswithmark.com for anyone who's interested. Wonderful little film. In fact, I was at a Convergence in July, and it's July, right? And earlier in July, and I did mention that film I did mention that film multiple times. So, I not know Neon's game. Well, I wish Infinity Pool was up for it. I do too. I really liked Infinity Pool. I love some good Cronenberg. Okay. Lastly, let's get to our last film here. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Let me get my notes up here. And this will kind of be a brief one. I don't have too much to say on this. All right. Here we go with the Beverly Hills Cop in 3, 2, 1. So Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is the fourth Beverly Hills Cop film and a legacy sequel, because it's been many decades since we saw the last film. Now, okay, so like the good and bad of this legacy sequel is that it does very much feel like a Beverly Hills Cop film. It takes a lot of the good stuff that worked in the previous films, and it plays them up. It has Eddie Murphy returning as Axel Foley, and he's pretty much doing the same stuff that he did as the Maverick cop within the previous films. But and I think but that's also like kind of a little bit of like the bad too, if I think of it, is that it doesn't become anything more than another Beverly Hills Cop film. And in fact, this movie will actually go out of its way to remind you of past aspects of Beverly Hills Cop, namely the soundtrack. The soundtrack repeats the theme and the synth score so many times just to remind you of like the melody. So you know the melody of Beverly Hills Cop, you know, da, 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 and it keeps going and going and going with that same theme. Almost as if it feels like some executive was watching them. It's like, where's the melody? We need more of the melody, because that's what people remember from Beverly Hills Cop. You need more of that. So yeah, the soundtrack does get irritating after a while. But the good news is, if you can tolerate it, if you can get through that aspect, and a few like the forced like cameos here, like a lot of the familiar characters are back here, like, you know, like Judge Reinhold's back. Was it Paul Reiser? You have John Ashton is still back here as the chief. So yeah, like a lot of returning characters here, but they mostly work. And of course, yeah, like they do play up the fact that, you know, these characters are older. They're obviously they can't keep at it to this game as long as they you know, that they can't keep doing the same stuff over and over. And like Paul Reiser's character was the first to admit, like, yeah, I'm getting too old for this crap. And not like the Lethal Weapon where it's like, oh, I'm getting too old. No, it's like, yeah, actually, we are getting too old and we got to stop this. And it's one of those things that, like, I feared, like, Axel was going to, like, just kind of lean into that and try to get used to retirement, but then get pulled out at the last minute. It's like, man, I was supposed to be retired, but then they pulled me back in. But no, it's actually, it becomes more about Axel just trying to reconcile a little bit more with the past. Namely, he tries to reconnect with his estranged daughter, Jane, played by Taylor Page, who, you know, they kind of have like a bit of a rocky relationship, and how he wasn't that present of a father over the past few years. But he does need to come to her aid when she becomes the target of this, you know, of a gang trying to cover up for some corrupt cops in California. So Axel's back on the case. He's got to unearth these cops, and, you know, it's a pretty decent investigation of, you know, tracking down, you know, people who he can't trust, you know, within this, you know, within like his department. So he has to team up with a younger detective played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He suspects that Kevin Bacon's character, who plays a police captain, might have something to do with it. So he tracks down the clues, and he does all his typical Axel quirkiness, and, you know, his comical banter is present throughout. So yeah, it does feel like a Beverly Hills Cop film. And I will admit this, like, I think the what works most about this film is just that Eddie Murphy hasn't lost his touch. Like my biggest fear was that, you know, Eddie Murphy was just kind of gonna lay back in this role and have like a little bit more of like a passive Axel that wasn't quite on his game. But no, actually he still got the smile, he's still got the wit, he's still got that snarky charm, and like the bizarre way that he tries to like ad lib with like witnesses and try to like push his way into crime scenes. It's actually it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun watching him try to like stumble and force banter. Like at one point he tries to charm a security guard who says that he has an acting career, and he highlights the fact that he was in Jupiter Ascending. So Axel tries to pretend like, oh yeah, I love Jupiter Ascending. Oh, I love this part. And of course, he's never seen Jupiter Ascending, so he basically tries to BS his way through it. And it's actually kind of fun to watch him kind of go through the typical stuff you would expect Axel to do in one of these films. At the same time, I love the fact that this is an R-rated cop comedy as well, because it would feel like, you know, especially for like being a Netflix film, they would kind of like lean away from, having, you know, an R rating, because they were going to release it like in, close to 4th of July. So obviously they'd want a lot of people watching it. But no, it's actually very refreshing, having this film where you can actually have a lot of violence, have Eddie Murphy throwing out profanity, and just having it felt like, if it was PG-13, there'd be like shackles on this film, and with that R rating feels like they're broken and they can kind of have fun with it and make it more of a Beverly Hills Cop film. And like I said, it's a very standard plot of investigating crooked cops. Nothing really new here if you've seen any like of a buddy cop movie along similar lines. But it has its fun moments. I love seeing Judge Reinhold again and how he gets some decent one-liners. Kevin Bacon is really fun as a villain. I love seeing Bronson Pinchot again as an eccentric art gallery dealer. Paul Reiser busting butts and John Ashton busting butts again. It's and then just the dynamic between Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Taylor Page is pretty fun. Especially, I love the fact that like between this and the Bad Boys film that came out this year with Bad Boys Ride or Die, I love the fact that there are all these like legacy sequels where it doesn't feel like the older generation is taking a dump on the previous generation, because it kind of got that vibe with Bad Boys 3. Where this new team came in and Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are making all of like the old people jokes about young people these days. And then in the fourth one, it feels like they kind of eased up here. And thankfully, within Beverly Hills Cop 4, it actually does feel like Axel isn't just talking down to, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character the entire time. It actually feels like they have some decent banter and some leveled cynicism between them. There's some great snark here. It doesn't just feel like an Expendables type of situation, just a bunch of old guys, taking a dump on this modern world and how they have to try to adjust here because they got to realize, eventually you got to step aside. You're going to have to work with these younger people. At the same time, I also like the fact that it doesn't relent on just making Eddie Murphy and Judge Reinhold, try to play up the old people jokes and, highlight the fact that they're old. We know they're old. We can see their faces. We can see the hairs. We know they are. But it's more fun to just watch them continue on with that spirit. Especially for that ending, I love the ending where Axel's in the hospital after all the carnage that went down in the finale, and he just leaves the hospital because he wants to go with something to eat. And even after that, when his daughter catches them, and he kind of more oh, okay, I guess I'll go back to the hospital. He still goes out to eat later on because that's just his character, and they don't really, and they don't betray him. They don't stick him in a box. They do play up the fact that he is old and he is a dad and he's got to learn to work with others more. But it's still the same old Axel who can still have fun, crack jokes, and be witty and charming, and still has that fun Eddie Murphy smile that, it kind of won me over. This is it's definitely I think compared to the other Beverly Hills Cop film, still pretty much the weakest. But hey, if you threw it on in a marathon, I wouldn't turn it off because it's got some fun moments. It's got some great fights and some pretty cool car chases that were a lot of fun to watch unfold. It's a pretty good cop comedy. It definitely feels like a Beverly Hills Cop film, for better or worse. It takes the best elements of those films and places them in a legacy sequel that feels just funny enough, and just exciting enough that it's a decent legacy sequel. It's a fine, suitable way to continue on with Beverly Hills Cop, and not a bad finale to go out on if this is going to be the last film we're going to get in this saga. So Beverly Hills Cop Axel F will be playing on Netflix. Has Netflix even taken off any of their originals? I doubt they will. So yeah, you can watch it on Netflix. Let's see. I'll read some of the chat here. Let's see. Reading the comments here. Speaking of the soundtracks, during one scene where they ambush Axel in the car, I swear the soundtrack remixes a score from Escape from New York. Yeah. Actually, yeah. I was trying to think because there are certain tracks in there where it does feel like it definitely is the Beverly Hills theme, but it feels like they're trying to mix in something else in there, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But I swear there was one where I think it was during the opening car chase, when he's in Detroit. I swear I think there's something they mix in there. I can't tell if it was like if it's just like a variation of the soundtrack or if it was something different, but yeah. But yeah, like Escape from I have to look into that because it did sound like something like that. Love Kevin Bacon having a villain summer. Oh, I will say that. Yeah, the connecting line here between MaXXXine and Axel F. Kevin Bacon playing villains, which is great. I love it. Kevin Bacon always does a pretty damn good job as villains, so not complaining about that. Could always use more Kevin Bacon. All right, well, we are just about at the end of the stream here, so let's do a quick recap of the movies reviewed today. We reviewed Twisters. It's a film where you go to see the big tornadoes, but you stay to watch the great dynamic between Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell, who have amazing chemistry in this film, and they're smart, intelligent, fun characters to watch. That you almost forget that this film's about cool tornadoes that blow stuff up. So it's a great disaster film with even better character chemistry as well. Reviewed MaXXXine, the trilogy closer to Ty West's X saga, and while it does embody a lot of the 1980s aesthetic, it is definitely the weakest of the X trilogy for having the least amount of kills and the least amount of weirdness to it as well. We reviewed Despicable Me 4, the fourth film in the Despicable Me saga, which has way too many plot lines going on and too many flat gags that just don't make for a cute and funny film. Not good news for a film that's resting on its laurels and we're probably going to get more of in the future. And finally reviewed Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, the fourth Beverly Hills Cop film. Not a bad legacy sequel. It plays up all the strengths of the Beverly Hills Cop movies, and it's mostly fun watching for Eddie Murphy's charisma, which has remained firmly intact for all these years. Not a bad buddy cop film. Mostly buddy cop film. Like it's mostly the Axel Foley show, but yeah, he does hook up with Judge Reinhold again. So of these four films, I think it's pretty obvious. My favorite one is Twisters, and thankfully that's the one that is in theaters this weekend. So among all those films, I would definitely say go see that, especially if you didn't like Twister. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how well this film turns out to be. So yeah. Oh, I should put up the credits here. So if you like more movie reviews and early reviews as well, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. You can read reviews for all the films that I reviewed today over on my website, movieswithmark.com. And you can also on my reviews there, I have placed the Just Watch app on there. So if it's streaming anywhere online or available to rent anywhere online, it will tell you from my review exactly. So like if you go look at my like Axel F review, it'll tell you it's on Netflix. And if you go to like Despicable Me 4, I'm pretty sure it will pop up on Peacock later this year. Or if it doesn't, it might show up on Hulu or Netflix maybe. Who knows? But the app will tell you. We will have more movie reviews later this summer. We got a lot more coming up. What do we have coming up on the horizon? Well, of course, next week we got Deadpool versus Wolverine. I will be seeing that, and I will be reviewing it. I don't know if I'll be doing a stream next week on it, so be sure to look at movieswithmark.com next week to see the early review of that. I think the review embargo, should be late afternoon on Tuesday. So check on Tuesday evening and you should see it. And what else we got? Well, we got tons coming in August. We got Trap coming up, the latest film from M. Night Shyamalan, which doesn't look like his other films. It looks like more like an action thriller akin to something like Sudden Death or something like that. I don't know why I said so. Just because it takes place in a stadium. So. I'm very much looking forward to Alien Romulus coming up as well. So lots of good stuff coming up on the horizon, and we are coming up on the award season as well. So looking forward to that. So be sure to like this video if you want to see more early movie reviews, and subscribe for more. So, and if you want to check out chapters from my new book on Saturday morning cartoons that I'm writing, you can check out my Patreon as well. I am adding chapters on that regularly up there so you can read it as I'm writing it. So, until next time, I will be returning maybe in about 2 weeks for reviewing Deadpool versus Wolverine, so we'll see how that Marvel superhero movie plays out in this summer. So, until next time, yeah, have a great summer, everybody.